How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of that show that will not be named. Pardon me for my lowered tone, but I have to start making these videos at night because they're the only time I could really, talk to anybody on account of my whole household being asleep and me having so much free time during the night. I'm a night owl anyway. I could pump out maybe 3 videos a night, depending on how much I have to talk about. But this particular episode, I would like to discuss something that my friend and I were talking about earlier today. That being the motives of killers in movies. Now, of course, along the conversation that me and him were having, it got misconstrued. He was talking about characters or killers in like one-off movies, whereas I was talking about ones from franchises. Because I was having a conversation with my friends and they brought up the aspect of making a movie and, I got carried away with it. I'm like, oh, if we make it, we could bring it to the Sundance Film Festival and then we'll become billionaires and yada, 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 yada. And they'll get picked up by a producer and stuff. And they're just like, well, we just really want to make a movie for fun. And that's when my friend Matt and I got into the conversation about what makes a good killer. Because originally we were going to come up with a comedy horror. And that brought to mind the subject of a few things I wanted to talk about on here. First thing, comedy horror and directors approaching it. Now, me personally, if I was going to make a movie, I wouldn't go with comedy horror, mainly just because, you know how everyone's definition of comedy is different. What one person finds funny, another person's not going to find funny. Well, taking that into consideration against a generation of people now who are offended by almost 90% of everything under the sun, I feel comedy is I feel it's the hardest genre to write for. Now, this isn't from any prior research. I'm not a film director, I'm not a filmmaker. I've edited things, I've filmed things, but I haven't really, in my opinion, gotten into the medium whatsoever. Or at least not enough to know what's going on. But I try to have a general idea. I look into it. And one of the things that I noticed is everyone always says, oh, maybe drama is the hardest to write for. Maybe action. I'm like, first off, action is not the hardest genre to write for. Watching a million Schwarzenegger movies, I think that's one of the easiest to write for. So I think comedy is definitely the hardest to write for, just because everyone thinks they're funny, and even the people who aren't funny think that they are. Me personally, I don't think I'm funny, but I'm told I'm funny all the time. I personally don't see it. I notice maybe small instances where I'll say something sarcastic and it strikes a specific chord and it's very good and the timing is alright, but I can't be funny 24/7. I think that's just not me. But going back to it, everyone thinks they're funny, but not everyone is. So when people attempt these types of movies, it's a hit or miss, and 90% of the time I believe it's a miss. I see that a lot in these indie films, where these people, they try to go for funny, but then it's like, okay, great, 90% of your humor is your particular friend group, which is, if we were to take this film and make it, big, 90% of it would probably just be inside jokes from our friend group, so I don't think that would work out. The second thing I'd like to talk about today was, that was really all I had to talk about the comedy and horror aspect, is because, I believe, comedy is very hard to get a grasp of. And then moving right on to what we were going to do about the killer in the movie. And I got into this whole thing about how, well, what if we made the killer have absolutely no motive at all? What if he was just evil that existed and he did what he did because he did it? And my friend Matt got into the subject of, well, he needs a motive. What are you talking about? He can't just be evil for the sake of being evil. Every single one of the greats had reasons. And I'm like, okay, let's go down that list, shall we? You have Jason Voorhees, which, taking out the part of him not being the first killer in the first movie, his whole reason was to, I guess, get revenge on the teenager. He doesn't like teenagers who drown him, which in my personal opinion is more of a dude, get the fuck over it situation. So I don't really count him due to personal reasons. The The big gleaming example was Michael Myers. Why did Michael Myers kill his family in the first few films? Why? Why did he do it? No reason. He was never given a reason. He's just, oh my god, he's here to kill you. He's looking for her. Okay, that's what he's doing, but why is he doing it? He's crazy? Until we finally get a reason a few movies later, where it turns out he's part of a Thorn cult, and in order to do this Halloween ritual, he has to kill every member of his bloodline, yada yada yada. But by that point, it became boring, and nobody cared anymore, and they stopped making Halloween movies. Well, at least they did until the resurgence of this new one, which is completely contradicting and canceling out 90% of the timeline of the original continuity. If Halloween had any continuity to begin with, I really don't. I lost track of it a long time ago. Going on to Chucky. Why does he kill? Because he does. That's him. That's what he likes. When you give a character a reason, then it becomes, like the mystery behind, in my eyes personally, the mystery behind the killer is completely null void. There's no point anymore. So that's what I was telling him. I'm like, what's way scarier is a killer with no motive. Why is he doing it? We don't know. Maybe if we keep watching, we'll figure it out. But when you don't figure it out, that's what made Lovecraft's stuff scary. And I don't mean to be one of those people that brings in, I'm going to do a whole Lovecraft video because he was so era-defining. Like, get the fuck out of here. Everyone and their mother's doing Lovecraft videos. So I don't mean to bring him up, but he's a good enough example in this respect. His shit was scary because you didn't know that much about it. It's just, hey, there's a giant eyeball floating in the sky that only like 2 people can see. Why is it there? What does it want? We don't fucking know. And that's why it's scary. I figure the same thing when you're writing, if I was going to write a serial killer, I do, like, When a Stranger Calls. I love that movie, and a lot of people don't really, talk about it. 2 of my favorite horror movies, both of them are about killers. Vacancy and When a Stranger Calls. And Vacancy, I guess there was a motive. They were trying to make smut films so they could sell them for profit, but I'm like, you're running a hotel. You couldn't, maybe make your hotel better to get more business. You'd rather just do the menial task of killing people and then filming it and then selling it. And okay, whatever floats your boat. But moving right over to When a Stranger Calls. The guy who's killing her, the guy who's trying to kill her, has killed other babysitters. He's a babysitter murderer. But the whole movie, he even gets captured in the end. Why is he doing it? We don't know. Do we ever see him? No. Well, you get like a glimpse of his face during the last scene when he's getting pulled away in the car. But that's about it. There's nothing else. And I like that because that made that killer scary. It's like, who is this guy? What does he do? I don't know. We don't know. What is his purpose? He has no purpose. He's evil incarnate. He exists. He's trying to get you, and that is all you need to know. And that's a good enough driving force. And it's eerie because it makes him mysterious. Now, in my personal opinion, that's scary as shit. Having a guy coming after you, you had no clue why he's coming after you. To me, that's the most terrifying thing in the world. If you know why they're after you, if you know their motive, you know what's making them do this, for me, all the fun of it's just is gone. It's like, oh, what's that? He's coming after me because I have a box? Well, let me just destroy the box, or let me give it back to him, for Pete's sakes. Maybe he'll stop coming after me. Shit like that. Which is why whenever I wrote, I'm in the middle right now. I'm a writer, by the way. I'm writing a series of stories right now about a serial killer. And why is he killing? Because he does. Because he can. Because he likes it. There's no particular zest to it. It's not about the reason why he does it. It's about the path that follows as he does it. All the crazy shit that comes out of it. And I think when it comes to killers, a lot of people take these things at on one side. The value of only one side of it. They don't turn it over and look at what else there could be. Like with horror movies, I tend to have a hard time getting a grasp of old horror movies, what they're really like, what the core of them is. Because, like with the Leprechaun movies, I watch different horror movies for different things. Personally, the Leprechaun series, I watch it for just the crazy shit that the Leprechaun can do. What magical way is he going to kill somebody this film? Jason, I don't really watch the Friday the 13th movies because to me, it's just a dude in a hockey mask hacking up kids with a machete. And that's it. Surprisingly enough, the only Friday the 13th movie I actually like is Jason X, which people refer to as the fucking worst of all the films. I thought that was the funniest. I thought it was the most amusing, because they turn Jason into a freaking cyborg, and then make him fight another cyborg. And I think that is the most incredible idea ever. Moving on right along to Halloween franchise, I love the first two Halloweens. A lot of people don't count the second one, but personally, I think if you're going to account for a solid timeline, I would count in the first two. By the way, that reminds me, there's this channel, Horror Movie Timelines, absolutely coolest thing I've ever seen. This guy takes not just horror movies, but like B movies and O movies and stuff like that, and he sets up like timelines, and he gives them, like years in which they came out. Really interesting channel. I'm going to put a link in the comments section below. I definitely want you to check him out. His channel's awesome. Although it's 90% of like him posting stuff that I love to watch, which is a lot of B movies, lots of post-apocalyptic films, B horror, B apocalypse, whatever. But jumping right back to point, I like killers with no motive. It's interesting. And we got into the conversation of he likes killers, especially, and then he mentioned that he means one-off killers, killers that are in only like one movie. And like I said before, the only ones I could really name were originally The Collector, but then they made a sequel, and even in the sequel, I guess there wasn't really a reason. He just did it because he was fucked up. And for me, like, doing it because they're just messed up in the head is like, to me, that's not a reason. That's not good enough of a reason. So in my mind, it's, they do it because that's their design. And I find that interesting. Same thing with the killer in When a Stranger Calls. Why'd he do it? Because he does. And that's a good enough reason. And it leaves him mysterious, and it keeps you guessing. And in my personal opinion, it leaves the franchise open for sequels. Or it leaves this singular property open for, franchise possibility. Franchise possibility. I don't know why I thought I said that wrong. But those are the two basic things I just wanted to talk about tonight. I found them both very interesting. The aspect of horror comedy, or writing comedy in general for the genre of film, and for the writing comedy for film, and the motives of killers in movies. But before I go, I also wanted to bring up, I wanted to dwell a little bit more on Chucky, because, Chucky and the Evil Dead, because these were all examples that I brought up with him. And yes, I'm sure he's right, and there are people who would love killers to have motives, but my personal taste, I just wouldn't. I like a killer without a motive. To me, it spices everything up. It doesn't make it the same old drab shit that we've been digesting for years on end. And I think when it comes to film, that's all anybody's craving anymore, is just a shake-up, a difference, something not necessarily new, but just out of the ordinary. And I think that's going to do it for this video, guys. I will see you all next time.